Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. So tell me, well, let's talk about the Northern Rhone. Your wines,
Yeah.
I tasted them, and tell me about 19, the vintage in general.
Yes. So, as yes, you have probably heard a lot of things about this vintage, but what we can say that of course it was a dry and a warm year, as all the vintage we have done in in the past. But it was a little bit different because the distribution of rain, drought, and high temperature was different compared, for example, to 18. And first, the good things for this vintage was that we had a lot of heavy rainfall during October and November 18. So after the very dry end season of 18, we had a lot of rain. So it built up the water reserve for the coming year. And then everything was quite easy for this vintage. We had a very nice bud break quite early due to the mild temperature and high level of water in the soil. But then April was a little bit cooler, so it slowed down the growth of the vines. Flowering happened in very good condition, and then we had a strong hailstorm on the Domaine de Thalabert on mid-June, so it impacts a lot the quantity of the production of this wine. But we were able to resume a normal cycle for the non-damaged grapes and leaves. And then, of course, we had the first very strong heat wave end of June and beginning of July due to hot air coming from Sahara. So we reached very high temperature, but it was only on a short period. So it did not affect a lot the quality of the cycle and the process of maturation, but it had an impact on the size of the berries and the thickness of the skin. And we were able to see very early in the summer that we will have a very dense and concentrated vintage due to these very small berries and thick skin. July and August, the temperature were higher than the average, but it slowed down step by step until harvest. And it was great because it helped to have this progressive ripening process. And one important thing, even compared to 18, is that we had very cool night, and it was good for us because we were able to sleep well. But also for vineyards, it was a kind of vineyards can have a kind of regeneration during the night. And then we started harvest on the 11th of September, and we finished on 27th of September. So it was very short.
Very early, yeah.
Yes, early and a very short window. It was really we had a very homogeneous maturation, and the weather was dry and hot, so the end of maturation was very, very fast. We have to adapt to this very short window. Usually we pick up the grapes during 3 or 4 weeks, and 19 was a very, very big challenge for us to organize all the harvest in such a short window. But yes, we did everything that we were able to do. We used also a large cold room to extend the picking time per day. And it was also a way to refresh the grapes before putting them in the cellar. So it was a big challenge, but all the team was very involved in this final step of this vintage.
How would you compare it, for example, to 2018 then? 2018 wasn't as rushed then. It was a longer picking period, right?
Yes. 19, it was the first time that we have to pick up in this very, very short window. Of course, 18 was the harvest in 18 was shorter than usual, but we had time. Yes, it was less a sprint than 19. 19 was really it's really one of the characteristic of this vintage.
You were sprinting because the grapes were very ripe. You didn't want them to get even riper, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. And we had to make some difficult choice. For example, in the middle of the harvest, we had to pick up all the grapes of Hermitage, all the Syrah. We pick up all the Syrah from Hermitage in 4 days, so it was really short. But in the same time, we have also our Crozes-Hermitage Domaine de Roure, where the grapes were very ripened and ready to be a pickup. But we had to make a choice, and we prefer to focus on the Syrah from La Chapelle. And we knew that Domaine de Roure was ripened, and that it will be too late after to preserve the taste of the grapes. So we decided not to produce this wine, for example. So we had to make really
tough decisions.
Choice. Yes, yeah.
And again, 18 was nothing. It was nothing like that then. The wines, like.
No, perhaps due to the beginning of the year in 18 was a little bit rainy compared to 19. So we had a high level of water, and then we also have a very important rainfall in June. It means that the hydric stress in 18 was more progressive compared to 19. 19, it happened very quickly.
Bam.
And then everything went very fast. It's true that one of our main challenge in the past vintages is really to prepare the vines and the soil to face the droughts. That's why biodynamic, green manure, taking good care of the soil is so important to keep the good health of the soil, and it's very important to keep the good cycle of the vines, and that we want the vines to nourish the grapes until the harvest. And if we have a strong lack of water, if the vines doesn't have enough water to be fed for the ripening process, then we only have deshydratation and concentration of the grapes, but it's not anymore ripening coming from the plants.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's dehydration, so you don't get ripe tannins either. So you can have high alcohol and like greenness. Well, of course, we know all that in places like California, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And so you can't irrigate. So it's very hard to, it's very difficult. So yeah, that's a new challenge. And what was sort of interesting in the wines that I tasted, so some of the wines are a little bit hot. They have, you can feel the alcohol. It's a bit warm, but at the same time, the whites were really they were they had a richness, but they still maintained this structure. Yeah. So maybe that was the phenolics but it's pretty interesting. I'm so glad we spoke, because now I understand, what happened. And was 20, did you face the same problem with 2020?
Yes, it's always, of course, each year is different, but we always have this same challenge to yes, to prepare the vines, to face drought, to keep a good ripening process, to avoid the strong lack of water. So it's really the most important challenge we have, and we are of course very happy with all the decisions we have made in the past, and which are so which brings a lot of benefits today, thanks to the quality of the soil, the high level of humus in the soil, and all these kind of things which are so helpful to preserve the ripening. But yes, 2020 is also another story, but a beautiful wine, and we try to preserve the balance between this high level, of course, of alcohol, high level of phenolics, and the brightness and the clarity of the fruit. It's very important. But I think if we are able to do that, we can produce amazing wine. And of course, we are lucky to grow vines on those beautiful terroirs. Without those beautiful terroirs, we couldn't do anything, actually.
Of course. I had, just by chance last night at a dinner, 2003 Chave. And it was really like falling apart. It didn't have structure, and it had real sort of raisin character. Your wines, like the 19s, don't have that. They're high in alcohol, but they still have, like, structure, the tannins there. So, that's, and also you make wines differently than back in 2003. So, you're understanding better what to do, right?
Yes, sure. And again, all the work we have done in the vineyards, yes, brings benefits years after years. And I think that today we have reached a good level of understanding, and also health of the soil, health of the vines. And it's so important to have all these small details working very well when we have to grow vines in such extreme weather.
And do you think that your vines, which are biodynamically farmed, were they better off with the drought conditions? Were they holding on okay? They still had green canopies. And
yes, we do some experimentation and a comparison every year to compare organic and biodynamic, just because it's good to have a strong conviction, but it's also great to see results. So that's why we do those kind of comparison. We are able to see that the hearse, with biodynamic, the hearse, even during the drought, has a better texture, retain more water, and in the organic part, hers is more like a sand and very dry. So we can imagine that the vines on the biodynamic part have a better hydric alimentation. So, and we can see that the vines are in better shape. It's green. We have the good ripening process. So it's all those small details which allow to keep the ripening process until harvest. And we also use a lot of green manure, and we, for example, we use rye, and we cut the rye in spring, and then it creates a kind of dry herb carpet.
To maintain the water.
Yes, it maintains water. It protects the soil again from the sun exposure. So yes, we have good results with those kind of work too. So yeah.
Good. Well, that's really fascinating to hear, because I know everyone's challenged with global warming, and that's what it's all about. So, it's really difficult, particularly when you're in a warmer area. So you have to you have less tricks to use, like people do in the New World, where they can irrigate. That makes a big difference.
But the good news is that we have less oidium, less mildew.
Yeah, that's true. So I have 4 wines here. We have the Thalabert 19, the Maison Bleue, Hermitage, and La Chapelle Hermitage. And then also there's a bottle of the 18 Thalabert.
Yes. Yeah. So you have 4 wine. You have Thalabert. Yeah. Okay. Let me know. We can start with Thalabert. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So do you want to start with the 19 then?
Yes, we can try both side by side if you like. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so Thalabert is really the flat part of the appellation, with those round pebbles coming from the glacier, and old vines which are not so usual in the appellation. So interesting to know.
Very beautiful.
And yes, 19 was affected by this strong hailstorm in mid-June. So it reduced a lot the quantity of the production, but we were able to to resume the normal cycle for the non-damaged grapes. But perhaps it brings even more concentration to the wine due to the very small yield, of course, during this vintage.
But it's quite tight. It's still, together. Sometimes with wines, when you get a certain level of alcohol, it starts sort of, it's almost feels diluted in a way. But this has a nice center palate.
Yes, it's it's compact and
has lots of Syrah character and flavor. It's not, again, like monolithic. It has lots going on. It's actually very solid. I said needs time to soften.
Yes, sure.
2 years minimum. Okay, and then the 18 is fresh. But you explained why. So. It's it's a different wine, but I like them pretty much the same. They're just a little bit different. So how about we go to Maison Bleue?
Yeah, so Maison Bleue, it used to be La Petite Chapelle. Perhaps you know.
Oh, okay.
It used to be this wine, and we renamed La Petite Chapelle Maison Bleue in 2015. Because with the name Petite Chapelle, people always believe it was a second wine with young vines and we don't have any young vines on the Hermitage. So we renamed this wine like this, Maison Bleue, and it's the eastern part of the hill of Hermitage, where we have deeper soil. We have pebbles, but with a red clay and this kind of mix between pebbles and earth.
Which name of the what's the real name of it?
It's
so which part is Maison Bleue then?
Maison Bleue, it's Les Murets. Les Murets on the eastern part, and we have the vineyards at the bottom of the slope, and then all this beautiful slope behind the small house. So yes, it's a nice place with many different exposure, altitude, so many different micro terroir and microclimates.
Yeah. and it's quite decadent. It has lots of character. I got black truffles, and so like you say, I said rich but still super attractive and intense, so that was. I'm very curious now to see how other wines are, who from neighbors. It might be pretty difficult if they had lots of shriveled grapes and like you really really interesting. Let's go to La Chapelle.
So but then La Chapelle, the vineyards are on the west part with the heart of La Chapelle is really coming from Le Méal with this beautiful
exactly. Yeah.
Facing south, all these beautiful white pebbles. And then the second important part in the blend is coming from Les Bessards with all the granitic soil and 100% of granite. Yes, it's another other approach of Hermitage, and it's always this blend of different kind of terroir.
It has more structure, more tannins and more profond.
Yes, layers. I think the wine has a lot of layers in the mouth. Maison Bleue is very generous, and you have all the power at the first nose, at the first sip. La Chapelle is has lengths and layers, and the granitic part also brings a lot of freshness and length in the wine, and that's why it's so interesting to blend those two kind of terroir to preserve the final complexity and balance and length of the wine.
So was this, like, compared to all the other vintages you've made, is it anything you can compare it to, or is it just a whole new experience?
It's very difficult to compare this 19 because we have this beautiful texture, layers, and the wine has a great density, but the finish of the wine is really bright, and we don't have this.
No.
We have the power of the. I think we have the power of the vintage, but also the energy of the soil and of the terroir. So it's a good combination of power, energy, and brightness, and it's difficult to compare. But it's always difficult to compare, but especially this one.
It's pretty, crazy, but it's not extreme like the O3s. It's not like that, because the O3s were quite sort of super fruit, you know what I mean? Like fruit driven, and this is more tannin driven, It's all the layers of tannins keep it together. So in any case, really interesting. I mean, really fascinating, the whole story. And I mean, it was very worthwhile. It was great to talk to you, to get find out what exactly happened.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Really fascinating.
No.
Well, thank you so much. And
it's
nice to catch up.
James.
Have a great weekend.
Yes. Same to you.
Okay.
Bye.